Well, hi, everybody. It's Trish Murray, and this is the New Age Tour Guide podcast. In episode 1 of this season, I had shared a couple of names other than the New Age Tour Guide that I had been toying with as it related to this particular podcast that I'm doing. And what the fuck is going on? The What the Fuck is Going On podcast was easily in my top 5. Now, I think I can say that most, if not all of us, are having that thought on a semi-regular, maybe frequent basis. What the fuck is going on? And I'm going to talk about that from a little bit of a different perspective. We're going to talk a little bit about this idea of the collective's evolution. But the question, what the actual fuck is going on the planet? What's going on in our country with our, quote, leaders? What's going on in our relationships? What's going on in our desire to want to maybe look for a different way of working or doing things in our business? In general terms, how is the clusterfuck of chaos that's unfolding right now in multiple aspects of our world impacting our ability to create and experience more of the life that we envision for ourselves? Because in my experience, that's really what it all comes down to, is we have a vision for our lives and every sub aspect of that life. And when we see this clusterfuck of chaos or all of this confusion or rapid change happening, that's the first thing that we start to really subconsciously or unconsciously pay attention to, is how is it changing my ability? How is it impacting my ability to create and experience the life that I envision for myself, that you envision for yourself? So in this episode, I'm going to cut right to the chase, and I'm going to talk very directly about, I'm going to say it's my opinion, kind of what is this overarching story that's unfolding in front of us? What's this all about right now? Sometimes you'll hear me talk about what's the end game. And I don't mean that in the same way that it's being used right now, either from a chess perspective, sort of closer to chess, less about, what is the diabolical end game. It's what is the end aim of all of the change and all of the chaos and all of the confusion. And this ties right back to the age of Aquarius. It ties right back to the age of authenticity. And so hopefully this episode does for you in a much shorter period of time than it took me. It took me 12 years to put the pieces together and to find the proof points, the proof points that my research-minded or research-oriented mind needed. I needed to find those proof points to be able to take the steps that my soul was prompting. So as I shift into the video, from the video into the audio segment, and I'm going to invite you to really take a pause as we do this, take a breath, tune in, and really listen for what it is that you need to hear today in order to shift your mind and prepare your heart and to reconnect with the soul deep wisdom that will help you navigate these rapidly changing, age-changing times. Rapidly age-changing times. And as we make this shift, I want to invite you to consider, what if our personal revolution is creating the collective's evolution? I've offered an astrological perspective on this question. I've offered a prophetic perspective on this question, and I've offered an intuitive perspective on this question. But today I'm going to share something that I feel is more like a psychological perspective, And I'm going to come back with another episode, either this season or next, that's going to be titled All of Life is a PSYOP. And we'll come back and unpack some more of what I'm going to share here today. But today I'm going to offer something that feels a little bit more like a psychological perspective on this. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what I took while I was working on my psychology degree. I want you to consider that what the fuck's going on the planet right now? The collective is evolving. The collective, humanity on a whole, is in a process, in a state of evolution right now. And this is the kicker. And it's happening because 8 billion people are going through their own personal revolutions. I'm going to mash up the psychology, the astrology, and something a little bit more spiritual or energetic in nature. I'm going to start with the psychological side of things. In the next few episodes, I'm going to talk about 3 individuals that really had an impact on me while I was working on my degree studies in psychology. These individuals were developmental theorists. They were developing theories of human evolution and human development, and they were sort of, obviously building off of where their predecessors had been, but they were kind of pushing the envelope, and they were really bringing, in my opinion, quote, revolutionary ideas relative to where their predecessors had been. Person number 1 is Erik Erikson. I'll talk about him today. And then I'm going to talk in a future episode about Abraham Maslow, and in a separate segment, Carl Rogers. But these 3 individuals had such a profound impact on me while I was working on my psych degree and considering, how it is that we become the people that we become or don't become the people that we're meant to be. What keeps us separate from our most authentic self versus, what's different about the people who really dial in to that true nature of who they really are. It was just a fascinating time in my life while I was studying all of that. And, to be clear, I wasn't studying psychology to go and be a psychologist. I had no intention of opening any kind of a clinical practice. I really stepped into it because I wanted to learn. I simply wanted to study psychology. So let's talk a little bit about Erik Erikson. Um, like I said, I think his viewpoint on human development was far more expansive than his predecessors, and at the same time, he could see further because he was standing on the shoulders of giants. He was building off of existing theories, and those theories really were suggesting that, from we go through a developmental period from birth to early adulthood, and his predecessors firmly believed that all development stopped in early adulthood. We were the people that we were as of early adulthood. Well, Erik Erikson came along and said, no. He came forward with a different theory, not completely divorced from his predecessors, but like I said, expanded. He showed a theory, and that's all it was. It's since, I think, been proved multiple times over, that we go through developmental phases that have milestones associated with each of those phases, and the degree to which we successfully complete that developmental phase and reach those milestones is the degree to which we go on to become the people that we are meant to be. And so he talked about how many people and why so many people don't really achieve their full authentic self. And he talked about how those milestones can be derailed or interrupted through those developmental phases a number of times because of, things like traumas or just, events that, take our attention away from focusing on that those developmental aspects. But what differed for him from his predecessors was that he was very clear about us going through these phases over and over and over again. If and not just repeating the phase, but deepening our understanding of what the developmental um, insights are at each phase. So each phase has a milestone, and there's, you could think of it in terms of going higher. If you're a mountain climber, you're climbing up the mountain to get to higher levels of insight at through each developmental phase. Or if you're a scuba diver, you're going deeper to get at deeper insights at each developmental phase. But it's all about, how do we achieve the milestones? Now, what was really interesting is as I was putting the talking points together for this particular episode, and I'm thinking about Erik Erikson, and I'm thinking about his theories of developmental evolution, if you will, for humans. What immediately popped in my mind was in astrology, and when astrologers talk about transits and return cycles. And so in astrology, if you're not familiar with astrology, it's kind of a cousin to astronomy, and astronomy tells us that the planets are always moving around up in the sky, and that has an impact on what's going on planet Earth. So what the fuck's going on planet Earth? Well, there's a whole lot of stuff going on above us, above us astrologically, spiritually, but there's also a whole lot of stuff that's going on in our own individual charts. In our own individual charts. Now, if you're curious about this, I invite you to find me on Instagram, DM me. I can send you a link to a little chart that I did. Maybe at some point you'll see this somewhere else on my YouTube channel. But I really get talking at certain points with certain people about the major returns and the pivot points that happen in our life. So all of the planets go through a transit. We know this because we have a birthday every 365 days. That means the sun has moved around the sky, moved around into each of the signs, and it's moved through the 12 signs of the zodiac, right? The moon is moving. Mercury, Venus, Mars are all moving, and they are all at some point moving back into the same place as they were on the day that we were born. That's what's called a return. It's a return to the place it was when it was on where it is on your natal chart. So the same thing is going to be true for Jupiter and Saturn and Pluto and Uranus and Neptune and all of the dwarf planets, all of the asteroids, right? The Chiron return. There's a whopper of a thing that happens around our midlife, which I won't get into here today. But my point is that Erik Erikson talking about these milestones and this repeating pattern of developmental phases and learning at a higher level, deeper level, whatever language you use, there is truth to this because you can find the exact same evidence of it in a completely unrelated field, which is astrology. Whatever themes are associated to each of the planets in your astrological natal chart, they're going to come up for review, to be repatterned, and in some instances for us to let go of things each time those planets move into a return position in our astrological natal chart. Now, if that isn't enough for you, let me add one more thing for you. In her book, Eastern Body, Western Mind, Anadea Judith writes does this, like, it is a brilliant piece of work. She is a psychologist by trade, and she ties the psychological evolution that we each go through together with the ancient wisdom of yoga and the chakras. She points to each of the chakras having a connection to the developmental phases in our lives that Erik Erikson would talk about. And she supports his theory by saying that if one of those phases gets derailed or we don't complete the the development of that particular phase, that shows up in, how balanced or imbalanced our chakras are. It is an absolutely fascinating read. It's called Eastern Body, Western Mind. If you are a geek like I am on this stuff, I think you probably would really enjoy it. So, what the fuck is going on? Well, I'd like to tell you it's simple, and it is, but it's complex. It's complex. We are each going through a personal revolution. And however you want to language that, if you're comfortable with the psychology, use psychology. If you like astrology, use astrology. If you're more into the spiritual realm, the energetic realm, and the chakras, and use that, right? But we are all going through a personal revolution. And in some respects, you could say your entire life is one big revolution. It's one big revolution. And I don't mean revolution in terms of that angry, fiery energy. I mean, it's about innovation. It's about creativity. It's about, in some ways, disruption and change so that we don't become stagnant, so that we don't find ourselves living in the same pattern over and over and over again. That's what all of these tools are. They are an invitation to explore the patterns that keep coming up in our world and to make some shifts. Like I said, they're moments of review, they're moments of repatterning, and they are moments of um, rebirth in some sense. Rebirth. So, what the fuck is going on? 8 billion people going through a personal revolution, and that is creating the collective's evolution. The collective is not evolving because of the collective. The collective is evolving because of each individual person moving through their own personal revolution. And I'm going to argue even further that the collective can't evolve unless each person goes through their personal revolution, whether that's psychologically, spiritually, emotionally, energetically, physically. So, like I said, I'm going to talk about Abraham Maslow and Carl Rogers in a later podcast. But for now, I really want to stay focused on this idea of our personal revolution, and the rebirth is what's creating the collective's evolution. Humanity is evolving. Some of you are going to be hearing the conversation of ascension, moving from 3D to 5D, the rising divine feminine energy. Some of you are hearing that the consciousness of the planet is rising. All of this is another language for the collective's evolution. It's evolving. Us as a collective of humans on the planet are evolving. And it's happening. It's only happening because we're going through this personal revolution process. And it's going to impact every single aspect of our life. Now, it might not show up. For me, it didn't show up in every single aspect of my life. It showed up in one or two areas. For me personally, it showed up in my health, and it showed up in my work, in my career, in my business sense, in that realm of my life. Those were the two things that went through a pretty significant personal revolution and rebirth. And then, other things followed after that because that's how that happens. But this evolution of the collective, of humanity, of society, of the global population. Richard Rudd, who brought us Gene Keys, which is kind of akin to, it's an extension, I think, off of human design. I haven't looked at it too closely, but I love some of the language that he brings through Gene Keys. And he describes, one of the things that's associated with this idea of personal revolution. It's, the gate 49 in human design, or the 49th gene key. There's an energy of being the catalyst. And in Gene Keys, Richard Rudd does talk about this evolution, or this journey through revolution to rebirth. But he describes this as changing the world from the inside. When he talks about this gene key, he talks about it as, sort of the underlying theme being changing the world from the inside. Changing the world from the inside. Well, thanks for joining me today. If this resonated for you, I'd be honored if you shared it with someone in your corner of the world by social media or by email. In the very first episode, titled The New Age Tour Guide, I mentioned that this unfolding age, this new age, and I put that in quotes, is like the all play in the game Trivial Pursuit. And when you listen to this conversation, this truth comes forward again. God, Source, Spirit, is bringing the collective's evolution through our own individual personal revolutions. We are the collective. Now, if you are curious about some of the core themes that might be woven into your personal revolution, I mentioned you could reach out to me through Instagram or on my website, and we can talk about that major returns and peak pivot points that happen. Or you can start to decode some of the insights that are woven into your birth data using the Soul Driver's Guide. This is a very concise and comprehensive package that provides some really powerful insights into what moves you at a soul level. I've included 5 of the most important and most relevant drivers from your human design, astrology, and numerology, along with a 15 or 20-minute highlight reel from me, where I walk you through each of the drivers and offer some things to consider, and how you can bring them into your personal prayer or meditation practice. And you have the option of letting me know if you want to look at your soul drivers through the personal lens, the personal revolution lens, or if you want to look at it through the lens of becoming a more strategic soulpreneur and building a business that you love. Until next time, I'm Trish Murray, casting a vision for this new age, one podcast at a time.